Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Battle. I am Michael Adams. My panelist tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King from Steelers Nation South. He's getting his picture straight there. We got Rollo Cawthon back. Tonight's debate is the greatest caddy. We are joined by here with us tonight a PGA Tour caddy. He was with Jay Haas for over, 10 plus years. Newport Country Club head pro. We want to welcome Bill Harmon here. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be on, guys. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. As always, we're going to have a Q&A after our debate, and we're going to get into some heavy stuff that Bill's had going on in his life and of course on the course. So let's start with our honorable mentions, guys who just missed the list. We got Elfie Flyers, Terry McNamara, Herman Mitchell, and Angelo Argia.
Yeah, Angelo.
Yes.
Yep, I caddied with Angelo. Yeah.
So those are our guys that just missed our list tonight, but we're going to start with Brian. Who are you representing?
All right, I got Jim Bones McKay here. He got his nickname from golf legend Fred Couples, who couldn't remember McKay's name, so he referred to McKay's tall, lanky frame when he described him as Bones.
Yep.
Bones was the longtime caddy for Phil Mickelson, perhaps the best golfer the game's ever seen. Of course, that's another debate for another time, but we actually had that debate with former golfer Bradley Hughes in episode 133. But anyways, Bones was with Mickelson for a total of 25 years. Bones caddied for Mickelson during all but one of his major championships. There was some social media chatter not long ago about Mickelson not appreciating the help that Bones gave him, but Mickelson denied all that in a scathing tweet in June of 2023, in which he claimed that he valued Bones so much that he paid the caddy 14% on all earnings and $1 million more than any other player. Not sure about if that's true or not, but that's what he said. So, if that is true, it's a testament to how much the presence of Bones on the course meant to Mickelson. After Bones parted ways with Mickelson, he spent 5 years as a caddy for another world number one golfer, Justin Thomas, and helped Thomas to PGA championships in both 2017 and 2022. So with this guy, you have the highest paid caddy, according to Mickelson, and a guy who helped two different golfers to elite status. That's Jim McKay, better known as Bones.
Bill, I want to come to you here. Let's start with a real easy question. What's the typical caddy percentage?
You know, it's funny. When I started in 1978, the salary was $150 a week and 5%. And then it started going up, and then they started more for top 10, let's say. So maybe you'd get 7% for top 10 and 10% for a win. But all the deals were different. Everyone was an individual thing. There was no union per se of what you were going to get paid. And so all the deals were quite different. But my understanding was that Phil was a very good payer. And I know that for a fact because when Butch started working for him and teaching him, my brother Butch, he said Phil paid him much more than anybody ever paid him. So I'm sure he paid his caddy pretty good too then. So I think the fact that he paid well was pretty much known in the caddy yard, let's say.
So any difference in caddying for a lefty?
Just where you stand, I think. I think that's the part that's interesting. And if you ever watch a lefty, let's say on the tee, they're always standing behind the right-hand player on the left side of the tee. And most players don't like somebody behind them. They want to know, they want you in front of them so they know what you're doing. They don't know what you're doing behind them. But I think the left-handed players realize that, and they're not in their peripheral vision or anything like that. So no big deal.
Let me ask you another question here because, Phil Mickelson, lefty, whatever we want to call him here tonight. Yep. He is known for taking more chances than probably any player ever. As a caddy, how are you dealing with that?
Well, Bones told an incredible story to me one time when Phil won the Masters and he hit that shot off the pine straw on 13. He said he knew Phil was going to go for it. And he actually slow played him on the yardage because he was trying to figure out a way to talk him into not going for it. And he came up with a thing that they laid up on 15 the day before to 83 yards. So he said he had his speech yesterday you laid up on 15 to 83 and you knocked it stiff and you're the best lob wedge player in the world, blah, blah, blah. He started in on that speech and Phil said to him, time out. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. He said, somebody is going to hit a great shot in the next hour and a half to win the Masters, and I'm hitting mine right now. So I would say that's about as confident as you can get. And unfortunately, that story never came out because every other station other than CBS would put the mic on when Phil and Bones talked because their conversations were so interesting. But CBS didn't do that. So the fans never really got to hear one of the great conversations in the history of a player and a caddy. Then on top of it, he knocked it stiff. So Bones told me that story, and I think that kind of tells you about Phil. Not afraid to lose, basically.
Inside information. Gotta love that. All right.
Yeah, I got some good stuff for you.
Well, let's move on to our second caddy here tonight, and that's going to be represented by me. I've got James Tip Anderson, Caddy Hall of Famer, of course, most known for his time at St. Andrews, the golf links over there. So we're talking European golf. I always say the wind's crazier out there, so it makes it harder for any golfer or caddy. But he helped lead Arnold Palmer to back-to-back Open championships in 61 and 62. And then when Arnie couldn't make it over there in 64, he recommended Tip. Yeah, yep. He recommended Tip to Lima, and Lima goes on and wins in 64. So Tip, he was Scottish, and his father was also a well-known caddy. And funny story is that Arnie Palmer, when he first went over there, he thought he was getting senior, not junior, but it kind of worked out, and the rest is history. And he used him for the rest of his career when he went over there to Europe. So when Tip passed in 2004, Palmer was quoted as saying, and I thought this was really nice, Tip was the epitome of the old world caddy, a man of few words, a wry, W-R-Y, wry Scottish wit, loyal, punctual, and of course, very good at what he did. And these guys, they were good friends. And, you could tell when Arnie was saying that he was hurt. But so these two, they spent 30 years together from 1960 to 1990.
Can I tell a story about that? Because I caddied in a group with Arnold and Tip. How's that sound?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm done. Let's get a story here. Go for it.
Practice round for the Open Championship at Troon, where they just played. It was the year Watson won, and it was a practice round. And they teed off about 5 o'clock. It was Jay Haas and Curtis Strange who went to Wake Forest on the Arnold Palmer scholarship. So they were like his little cubs. And Larry Nelson, who was obviously a great player. And the first few holes going out typically would be downwind, and you do everything in your power to keep it from hitting in these bunkers. And Curtis and Jay had never played the course, and I had a yardage book, and so they were going to lay up, hit a 3-iron or something in a wedge. And Palmer started riding them about being little chickens, I'll clean that up a little bit. And he said, when I won here, I think it was 62 or 3. He said, when I won here, I hit driver on every single hole. Isn't that right, Tip? And Tip had recorded every shot that Arnold had ever hit that he caddied for me. He says, no, Mr. Palmer, you hit a 1-iron off this tee. So he refuted what Arnold was telling the kids because Arnold was trying to get in their head. So that was my Tip Anderson. That was my first experience with him. And when I caddied in other Open championships, I'd have a couple beers with him and stuff like that. But he was a real character. I'd say he was exactly what Arnold said. But I thought it was pretty cool that he disputed what Arnold said right there on the first tee.
And for 30 years, he never called Arnold anything other than Sir and Mr. Palmer. So I thought that was cool.
Yep.
But
yeah, he was a gentleman.
Caddy of the Year in 1965. So kudos to him on that. Let me ask you now, how do you think he could have fared over here in the States as a full-time caddy over here?
Well, if he had Arnold, he would have been good. Yeah. Everybody says to me, what's the most important thing a caddy can do? And I say, get a good player. So that bothers a lot of the tour caddies because my theory is a good player and bad caddy is still a good player. Bad player and good caddy is still a bad player. Good caddy, good player, slightly better player, I would say. So if Tip had Arnold, yes, he would have done very well. But if he would have had somebody else, it wouldn't really make any difference.
Right.
Kind of hard to be the coach of an NFL team with a terrible quarterback. You know?
Yeah,
It's true,
absolutely.
actually. It's true. Yeah.
Good analogy. I like that. Well, let's move on to Rollo. Who are you bringing, Rollo?
I got Fluff, Mike Fluff Cowan from Winslow, Maine. He's probably one of the most recognizable figures in as a caddy with his trademark mustache. Fluff began his career in the 70s, caddying briefly for Ed Sabo before working with Jacobson for 1978 to 1996. Cowan and Jacobson wound up winning 6 times on the PGA Tour before splitting in 96. He was then the caddy for a young Tiger Woods when he made his debut at the Greater Milwaukee Open in 1996. He was also the caddy when he won his first major title in 1997. He would wind up being, rumor is he got released by Tiger because in an interview he had disclosed that he was making $1,000 a week plus 10% of Tiger Woods' winnings. So Tiger was the rumor is that he got rid of him because of that. He wound up hooking up with Jim Furyk in 1999. The first tournament together was the 99 Masters and was his caddy for the 03 U.S. Open where he won. He was also the caddy for the 2021 U.S. Senior Open, which Jim Furyk won. He was also Furyk's caddy at the 2016 Travelers Championship when he shot a 58, which was the first time a player had shot a 58 on the tour. He was inducted into the Caddy Hall of Fame in 1999. He's also inducted into the Maine Sports Hall of Fame in 2005.
I know Fluff very well. I started in 78, traveled with Fluff. I roomed with Fluff a lot. I would say I've known Fluff since 1978, and you did some great homework there saying he started with Ed Sabo, because even I thought I was the only one that knew that. And so got a lot of good Fluff stories. Not many of them I can always tell. But I know Fluff very well. I consider him a very good friend, and I probably roomed with him 50 times on tour, and we rode to tournaments through the night, listening to the Grateful Dead and all that stuff. And I will tell you that I can't tell you the real story, but I do know why he got fired. And it wasn't that story, but it was my brother Butch was working with Tiger at the time, and Butch is the one that recommended Fluff to Tiger. But it wasn't that story that did it. It was something else. But I wouldn't want to disclose it because Butch has never told anybody the real story, nor has Fluff, and nor has Tiger. So I think that I would be betraying my sources if I told the real story. How's that sound?
Any idea like how much he helped on that round of 58? I mean, that was, as Rollo said, that was the first time that ever occurred in the PGA.
Well, I think what happens, I had a rather abbreviated career. I think I caddied for 6 wins, maybe. Anytime you're under the gun and they're asking you these questions, you're under a lot of duress and a lot of pressure, because you can't say, I'll get back to you in 5 minutes. You have to have the answer right then and there. So he had to be helpful. You had to be helpful at that point, whether you were keeping them calm or you might have talked them out of a club. When you caddy on tour, you're also a psychologist. You got to read your player. You got to read his moods. You've got to know, does he hit it 7 yards further when he's jacked up, or does he like hitting shots in the left pins and right pins? So there's all kinds of intricate little things that a good caddy would be able to be helpful at that really aren't quantifiable. And so, yeah, he had to be helpful. And, he's had too many wins with too many players to say that he didn't know what he was doing. Fluff was very calm under the gun. Bones was calm under the gun. I think that's a trait, because we're nervous as hell when you get a chance to win a tournament, because you give them the wrong club at the wrong time. I figured out one time you're asked about 1,000 questions a tournament. And if you answer one wrong at the wrong time, you could lose your job. So it's about the only job in the world. You know, look at the static that Rory's caddy got at Pinehurst, which is anybody that knows anything about the game. I'm so surprised that one of the players, Smiley Kaufman, brought that up. I mean, he doesn't know if Harry told him to hit an 8-iron. Maybe he told him to hit an 8-iron. And Rory said, no, I want to hit 7. So that stuff happens all the time. So I'm not a big blamer of caddies because I think the player has the last choice. That's his choice. And I'll tell you this, Fluff and Joe LaCava and Stevie Williams all told me that Tiger was very easy to caddy for in that regards. He never blamed you for a bad read or a bad club. He would take your input and then he would make the final decision. And if he went with your decision and it was wrong, he never once blamed you for it and everything, which I think is being a good boss, because you got to have a caddy. You have to let them be aggressive when it's time to be aggressive. You can't chop their gonads off, so to say.
Right. Rollo, I wasn't sure if that was a picture of Wilford Brimley, Andy Reid, or Fluff, but I figured it out. But let's move on to our final caddy tonight. Brian, bring us your second caddy.
All right. Well, he just mentioned him, Stephen Williams. Been a caddy on the PGA Tour across 5 decades, getting his start in '82 and on into 2023. Williams has one of the very impressive resumes in terms of the success of the golfers who he has been the right-hand man for. He got to start with the great Greg Norman. Working with Williams, Norman was runner-up at the Masters twice, the PGA Championships once, and the U.S. Open once. He was also by Norman's side when the Shark won the Open Championship in 1986. After he left Norman, he joined up with World Golf Hall of Famer Raymond Floyd. Williams helped the elder statesman to see a lot of senior tour success, including back-to-back Byron Nelson awards in 94, 95. Next, Williams hooked up with the then young phenom Tiger Woods and helped to guide him to enormous success. Tiger won 3 Masters tournaments, 4 PGA championships, 3 U.S. Opens, and 3 Open championships while with Williams. Despite the success, Tiger shockingly let Williams go. Many believe Tiger was trying for a fresh start after his public scandal, but Williams took it personally. Williams moved on and began caddy work for Adam Scott. After Scott won the Bridgestone Invitational, Williams had some controversial words about it aimed at Tiger, but eventually the two seemed to come to peace. Adam Scott went on to win the Masters with Williams, backing him up, which was the only one of his career. Williams also spent time briefly as the caddy for Jason Day in 2019 and for LPGA star Danielle Kang in 2017. So you have 5 decades of caddy work for some of the biggest names, including Tiger Woods, and a little bit of controversy. So that's Stephen Williams.
You know, another thing about Steve that I read today is that he caddied for Peter Thompson, who won 5 British Opens at the age of 13. And so Steve, I believe, went and caddied on the European tour maybe when he was 16 or 17 years old. So he's been around a long time, and I know Steve pretty well too. Fortunately for me, can't say I knew Tip real well, but the other 3 I've spent a lot of time with, so I know quite a bit about all 3 of those.
So Steve is probably, I would say, the most well-known caddy today. I mean, people don't even know golf. They know Steve Williams, and that's a credit. But, we mentioned some problems he had with Tiger. Tiger has not been good since he left Steve. Is that part of it?
I can't really say it is, because Tiger's body started to break down. His body really started breaking down shortly after he got rid of Butch. And so the other teachers that had Tiger after Butch, they were working, I think, with a wounded player, and he had to kind of piece his swing together, and he still won a lot of times because he was Tiger Woods. But Stevie was, it's not easy to caddy for someone like Tiger, because he was a cult-like figure. And I caddied in probably 20 groups with Tiger. I knew Tiger well. been around him a lot because my brother Butch started teaching him when he was 16. So I've been in his company quite a bit. And he's he was the Beatles. He was he couldn't move without 10 million people watching him and everything. So Joe LaCava and Fluff and Stevie, it's not as easy to caddy for somebody like that as it might appear. A lot of heat on you.
Well, let's move into our vote, guys. You can pick any tonight, even if it's your own. So I'm going to go first. I hardly ever vote first. I am going with Steve Williams. And it's not just because of the popularity thing. If you go from Norman to Woods, Floyd, Scott, I mean, everyone that he's been with has been successful. And I find that very impressive. And he's also dealing with a bunch of different personalities. And I think every caddy deals with that. But there are some extra personalities that he has dealt with between the Shark and Tiger and things like that. So I'm taking Steve Williams. Brian.
I gotta agree with you. I mean, they all did a great job, but Williams just to me was just a little bit ahead of those other guys based on what you said. Just the being able to deal with so many different diverse characters like that. That's tough. A lot of personalities.
Yeah. Rob?
Yeah, I got to go Steve Williams. I mean, he was a caddy for essentially who was the biggest star in the world at one time. He was bigger than Michael Jordan as a golfer. So Steve Williams.
All right. Bill, you got a round of 18. Who you want caddy in your bag?
I got to go with Stevie, and it all starts with he caddied for Peter Thompson when he was 13 years old, and Peter Thompson was a 5-time Open champion and a pretty taciturn guy, and he left his home in New Zealand to go to Europe as a teenager, and he worked his way up through the ranks. I mean, I love Fluff, but he went from Maine to somewhere, and Bones, went from somewhere in Georgia to Larry Mize. And so, but the other thing is Norman is a tough character, not easy. Raymond Floyd, not easy by any stretch of the imagination. All very loyal guys, from what I understand. I know that a guy named Tony Navarro caddied for Greg for a long time and said he treated him great. Said Raymond Floyd treated him great. But on the course, they would stare at you. If you gave them a wrong club or misread a putt, you're going to get that look, which I never really liked because you're standing there in front of 25,000 people, and the guy's looking at you like, you didn't have to, don't ask me if you don't want to hear what I'm going to say. But I think Stevie got a little bit of a bad rap because he had to be the bad guy for Tiger. And when like I said, I caddied probably in 20 groups with Tiger, and you couldn't even fathom the amount of stupid things that people said to him. Just hole after hole after hole after hole. And after a while, you just want to, and Stevie a couple of times kind of did go into the gallery. I think he threw a guy's camera in the lake one time and stuff like that. So I got to go with Stevie. I think his record, and it's oddly enough, he ended up with the nicest guy that ever lived in Adam Scott. So he had, Adam must have seemed like Mother Teresa to him after the three that he was with. Tiger and the Shark and Raymond Floyd.
Well, a sweep for Williams and a win for Brian. Let's move into our Q&A. We'll go Brian, roll with me.
All right, Bill. 1948, a guy by the name of Claude Harmon Sr. Became the only club pro to win the Masters. That man was your father. So can you tell us about what his influence meant to you as it relates to your love for the game of golf?
Well, I never met anyone that loved golf more than my dad. I don't think there's ever been a golf professional like him. He won the Masters as a club pro. If they were rating teachers back then, he would have been the best teacher in the world. And he mentored 60 assistant pros to go on to have head pro jobs. 3 of assistants won majors. So I don't think he was kind of the Renaissance man. And he never did play the tour even after he won the Masters. He was a pro at Seminole in Florida and Wingfoot. And what most people don't realize, he had 4 other top 3s in major tournaments. So it wasn't a fluke. And the year that he won the Masters, the PGA was match play back then. And he lost on the 38th hole in the semifinals. So he almost won two majors in 1 year. But he was kind of an uneducated genius. And his eye for the golf swing and his love for the game Um, you would have never heard of Butch Harmon if he hadn't learned from my dad. My dad had some ingenious. He says things that no one's ever said, and I have never heard another teacher say it. He said, when you're working with a great player, don't figure out what they're doing wrong, figure out what they're doing right, because they wouldn't be great if their swing was wrong. And so be very careful what you change with a gifted, talented player. And then you just want to maybe soften something. But I think the modern day teacher that's staring at TrackMan and numbers and everything, they don't ever really look at the ball, you know. And they're trying to fit you into a model. And my dad didn't have a model. He said, great players in all sports are more gifted than other people. So be very careful what you change. And if you look at Butch's players, you can't tell that they take lessons from him because he doesn't change the general personality of their swing. So he taught us the love of the game and the love of teaching. And that teaching was a big part of the game of golf, and mentoring was a big part. If you had people that work for you, your responsibility was to make their lives better and their family lives better. So I think he gave us a lot of really, really good pearls. It was, I'll go one step further and say that 2 years ago, I was playing Augusta with my brother Craig and Butch, and we went up to the champion's locker room, and his locker's still there.
Oh,
And we
wow.
were sitting on the bench, and we got choked up. You know, as Butch was 79, I was 72 or 3, Craig was 77. And it was almost like our whole world hit us of how fortunate we've been to be Claude Harmon's son. We're the luckiest. When my brother Dick was alive, I'd say we were the 4 luckiest guys in the history of the game. And what we were exposed to and what we're still exposed to is, I'm very humbled by it. Somebody asked me recently what it was like to be one of the Harmon brothers, and I said, cool. It's really cool. You wouldn't be asking me probably right now to do this show if it wasn't for that guy that won the 40. See, I didn't have anything to do with being one of his sons. So I just got lucky, man.
Right.
Bill, give me your dream scenario, your dream course, your dream golfer, and your dream event.
Well,
Put the three together.
you know, you would think that the Masters would be my dream event. Obviously, if I caddied, that would have been the one I would have loved to have won. But I think the Open Championship is the coolest tournament in golf. Favorite course, that's always a hard one for me. Because I grew up at Winged Foot, so I want to say Winged Foot, but Winged Foot's so hard that would you want to play it every day, you know? And so I have a hard time with, you know, there's like 5 courses that I really liked. But as a caddy, I would have loved to have caddied in somebody who won the Open. And my dream foursome would be my mother, my father, and my brother Dick, because they passed away. But if I went to golfers, it would be Ben Hogan, Lee Trevino, and probably, you know, it'd be either Jack or Tiger. I'd make it a 5-some, Jack and Tiger. But Lee Trevino was the best player I ever saw, best ball striker. Jack and Tiger were the best winners I ever saw. And Ben Hogan was not far behind those guys either.
So you and Jay Haas, good friends. You took one tournament. You took a tournament together at the 44th U.S. Senior Open in June of 2024 here.
Yeah.
What was it like to be back out there with Jay after all these years?
Well, everything that I have in my life today that is good, Jay Haas has had a hand in it. I caddied for him in 78. That's when I started, and I met my wife caddying for him. I'm not proud of this, but when I did caddy for him, I was drinking a lot and doing a lot of drugs, and I've been clean and sober almost 32 years now. He had a good hand in that. He's literally the best friend I've ever had, I think. And he's never told me one thing to do in all that time. He's just lived he was everything that I wasn't when I started caddying for him. And I had such admiration for him, which I still do. And even at age 70, coming off back surgery, he broke his age twice in the Senior Open and shot it another time. And one of the writers said, I don't think that's ever happened in any major championship where a player broke his age twice and shot his age in the other round. So he's a remarkable pro. I'll tell you a story because you guys are all sports freaks. He was in the President's Cup, and when he was 49 years old in South Africa, I caddied for him. Jeff Sluman, who my brother Craig taught, I jokingly say since he was this high, but he's still that high. He was a vice captain. And Jeff came to me one day and he said, boy, I had breakfast with Jack this morning and you can't believe the story he told about Jay. And I said, what was that? He said, about a week before we came over, he called me up and said, Jack, he said, I just want you to know that I care about one thing and one thing only, and that's winning the President's Cup. And if you don't play me, you don't have to call me in a room and tell me why or all that stuff. If you want me to play every match, I'll play every match. If you want to sit me every match, you can sit me every match. But one thing I don't want you to do is worry about my feelings. I'm there for one reason and one reason only, and I'll do whatever it takes to win the President's Cup. And Jack said to Jeff Sloan, boy, it'd be nice to have 12 players like that. Because I can assure you they're not like that. I've been in those team rooms, you know, they want to play with their best friends and all that stuff. And they got a little diva in them. Jay don't got no diva. He'd be the kind of guy you'd want up in the ninth inning, you know, with a runner on second.
Right.
He gonna put it in play. You know, so I said he was I always say he's a good player that's had a great career. Great career.
Good, Brian.
You know, talking about decades, I caddied in 7 decades. How about that? I caddied for Butch in 1969 in the Canadian Open. That's how I got my 7.
Oh,
And
okay.
you guys are sports freaks, but Jay Haas has played in USGA events in 7 decades. Think about that.
Wow.
Not tried to qualify, played in them. From juniors to amateurs to, so I think he's the only male that's ever done it. So that's a pretty
incredible.
cool record. Yeah, it is. You got to be good a long time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he did some of it with me caddying for him. That's how good he is.
Well, Bill, let me ask you this: as a caddy, you know, your golfer's in a slump or your golfer's on a roll. Does your approach change in any kind of way, or is it you try to stay consistent?
Yeah, I always, before every round, when he would be on the putting green, I would try to go into kind of a state of blankness where I didn't want to react to the good and the bad. I wanted to be even keeled. I wanted to be able to make good decisions. Jay was a lot smarter than I. Early on, if he got off to a bad start, I always wanted to gamble like an idiot. And he had the opposite approach. He said, no, I got to get my feet on the ground. I got 72 holes. If I'm good enough, I'll be okay. So I learned a lot about that from him. I learned a lot about that from my dad because he learned golf course management from Ben Hogan. He and Hogan were great friends. They played hundreds of rounds together. So I tried to stay even though you're choking your guts out. And you're very nervous. You know, you're very nervous. Anyone that caddy that says he's not nervous, he's lying, you know, so, and we had some devastating losses and we had some great wins, a few great wins. And so I always thought if you couldn't handle losing, then you shouldn't be doing it, you know, and golfers almost never win anyway. So other than the Tigers and the Jacks, they hardly ever win really, you know, so it's kind of a weird thing. What Schauffele, he's won a couple majors and maybe 6 or 7 tournaments, you know, and he's a great player, but it's not like he's already won 20 or 30 or something. So it's hard to win. It's hard to beat the 150 best players in the world all in the same week. You know, it's almost, when you think about it, you can't even believe that you could win actually, because so many things, good things have to happen for it to work out that way. So what Tiger and Jack did that's crazy. You can't do what they did. You really can't. No way to do it.
So I'm going to try to combine a few questions here into one. So there was a great article recently on Yahoo Sports about you, you know, your sobriety and all that you went through. So looking back at that on your career, your cancer diagnosis, you know, overcoming that.
Yeah.
How do you use these things that have occurred in your life at your performance center? Do you put that into what you're teaching these up and comers?
Yeah, I think what I've learned from all of that stuff is I got 2 mulligans and I hit them both down the middle of the fairway. The cancer and the addiction stuff. But I learned that you have to be grateful. I think you have to be grateful to be a pro athlete, even though it's difficult and all that stuff. I think you have to accept that there's going to be bad times. You're going to go 0 for 12 in the series when you don't want to. You're going to fail when you don't want to. But I think you have to be a survivor. I remember Jay Haas said to me one time, I've sat in 100 hotel rooms on a Friday afternoon, bogey in the last hole to miss a cut, wondering if I'd ever make another cut again. But he said, I only gave myself till Friday night, but when the clock hit 12:01 come Saturday, I got to get ready to get better. So I think all pro athletes go into slumps. All pro athletes have personal problems. And I'm wired to figure out a way to have those make me a better person. And I don't know where that came from, probably my mother and father and stuff. But yeah, I use a lot of that stuff because I don't like whiners for starters. So I don't teach whiners. I don't teach guys that, you know, complain about the color of their courtesy car. So
That's got to be hard today. Everybody's a whiner, all these young
it seems like it, but I don't
generation.
work with any tour pros anymore. I don't have any desire to be honest with you. I don't really think they'd care about what I was thinking because I shoot pretty straight, you know. And I've always marveled. I've had people ask me, you know, why is Butch so good? And I said, well, he is. But one of his strengths is he has an enormous ego. And I'm not saying that as a criticism, but I've been there when Tiger would hit a decent shot. He'd say, oh, you got lucky. That was a shitty swing. There's no teacher in the world ever say that to Tiger Woods. Guarantee they wouldn't. And I've seen him do it with Mickelson and the best players in the world. And so he had something about him that they believed what he said. And his delivery was not all that, wasn't an encounter group with Butch. You know, it was spit in your glove and let's quit whining and let's get it done, you know. And so I think nowadays, almost every young golfer has a coach. So they're used to having a coach. And when these players say, we did this and we did that, I just want to jump through the screen and choke them to death. You know, they didn't do it. The caddy didn't do it. You did it, you know. And so I like the players that stand on their own 2 feet and take the punches. And I think you guys are all sports freaks, and you probably like that about all good athletes, you know, when they blow a game in the 9th inning, they stand in front of you guys in the press and say, you know what, I threw bad pitches, got beat, you know, no excuses, no nothing. So I didn't have any excuses. I had a great childhood and stuff, you know, nobody poured the drink down my throat or the cocaine up my nose. And oddly enough, I quit smoking 20 years before my throat cancer, and it caused my throat cancer. So I don't have a somebody done me wrong song there either. I did it myself. So I just like people to take risk. My dad used to tell us, and I hated this when I was a kid, but the person holding on to the end of the club must take responsibility where the ball goes. That means you get to be responsible for the good ones too. So be responsible, I would say, and be accountable for yourself and your actions. See, when you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, you're a con artist. I mean, I'd lie when the truth would serve me better. You know, so one of the things I learned early on in recovery that I liked is if I con you, I might hurt your feelings, but if I con me, I want to get loaded again. So I don't con me anymore. So I'm going to see if I can make it to midnight tonight without a drink. So I'm betting on me though.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, thank you
Okay,
so much.
guys.
I appreciate you sharing your stories and everything. It was great to talk with you, Bill. Thank you for being
You got
here.
it. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
If you ever need a lefty out of the bullpen, you can always get a hold of me.
Remind everybody, hit that like, subscribe, notification button. We'll see everybody next time. Have a great night.